Hi guys, and welcome to Success4.com and Success4MEETS, and I'm here with Mark Sephton. Mark, how are you?
I'm unbelievable. I think one of the funniest things I ever heard an American once say, he said, if I was any better, I'd be twins.
Two of you. Two
Yeah,
betters. Yeah.
because you're that good, you can duplicate yourself.
Well, Mark, let an audience know a little bit about you. You're a mentor, entrepreneur, used to be a radio show host. You've got your TV show, One More Round, now on digital TV. And also, I know you've written a couple of books, Inside Job and Plot Twist. And just tell us a little bit about how you got into this line of work, coaching, entrepreneurship and business.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, the whole kind of conversation around entrepreneurs born or made is something that we could spend the whole 30-minute,
Yeah.
onto that. And I touch on it a little bit in Inside Job, actually. And I guess my conclusion was very much around the fact that I see entrepreneurs similar to the kind of metamorphosis that a caterpillar and a butterfly goes through. You have to have the right conditions and the right environment in order for that caterpillar to cocoon itself and then transform into a butterfly. And I think, being an entrepreneur is very similar. I think you have to have the right environment and the right culture in order to be able to crystallize, metamorphosize yourself and go from being from one state, a caterpillar, into a butterfly. And I think everybody has the ability to be a risk taker, to create. I think we're all creative beings, but I don't think everybody has the opportunity to actually metamorphosize themselves from, being a human being into an entrepreneur. And I guess, for me, we all have influences. And for me, my grandfather was an influencer in terms of my entrepreneurial spirit. He was one of those serial entrepreneurs, Richard, where he had a market at Coventry Market, which obviously was the way we used to see business, back in those times, wheeling and dealing, having a stall, having a product, and then just being able to flip it for a higher margin. And, he used to have business in insurance and in jewelry and in property, and one of the things that I think he taught me, because I feel like most of the things he taught me were on reflection after he died, when I really considered the things that he'd created. One of the things that really shone out for me with him was the most important thing in business is your reputation. He always, even now, there's things that I benefit from because of the legacy that he created, his ability to treat people with respect. Even now, there's things within the business world that I benefit from because of the way my grandfather was. And I think that ability to solve a problem, because fundamentally that's what entrepreneurship is what problem can you solve? Can you solve a problem that affects, as many people as possible? That's when your business is scalable. You want to make £1 million, go find a solution that affects 1 million people. And I think, that kind of lifestyle really spoke to me. The fact that he drove his own time, he had his finger in different things, but fundamentally he was a man of the people, had a great ability to connect. And I think for me that made me curious, and I really struggled in school. I've never learned by academia in terms of studying a manual. I've always learned by doing. My strength's been around people. My parents were both in employed work, so it kind of jumped over them, which I found, actually, speaking to other entrepreneurs, sometimes that happens where it seems to jump a generation. And at 15, I left school. I actually went into retail and hospitality and worked within that industry for about 12 years. But within those roles, I took on leadership roles. So I was always leading people. At the age of 18, I was managing people, twice, 3 times my age, which I think must have been hard for them as it was for me. Who is this 18-year-old, kid who thinks he can manage me? But I've always been good at making decisions. And that left me curious, the fact that people would naturally open up to me. And I guess that's when I started to think about what kind of business can I, have where I can do my own thing, but use those skills and that DNA that I believe, was stimulated from my own grandfather's role model experience. And that took me on some business development, some leadership development, some life coaching, where I did diploma in that. And I took the bits that really resonated with me. And I first branched out as a hospitality consultant and worked with, restaurant, pub and hotel owners. So taking my experience, creating my own business, being, responsible for my own time. And I did that for about 18 months, and it was quite difficult. I learned quite a lot about myself and about the whole world of, business. It's different going from a corporate environment and, working a job to actually driving and being the answer to everything. And it was through that, I guess, that things really started to open up. And I really believe that we have to pivot. We have to evolve. Otherwise we end up like Borders. We end up like no, it's not H&M. Well, help me out with the music.
HMV.
Yeah, that's the badger. HMV. Yeah. Otherwise, we end up like them. We don't evolve and pivot. I was actually speaking to a dragon who was on the first couple of series on Dragon's Den. It was having a conversation with her in Derby over a coffee, and it was apparent that I needed to pivot my business to working specifically with entrepreneurs. Because a lot of my skill set and passion is around self-leadership. So while it has certain elements to it that affect the business world, really my strength and where my passion and quality comes from is the ability to lead yourself and the ability to connect, with other people. And through your ability, through problem solving and relationships and having a key vision for your life, that's really where I give the most value to the marketplace. And the whole world of entrepreneurship is so fun. I want to be around people who have the balls and the audacity to think that they can create something that the world and people need. So that's kind of where I've kind of thrown myself. I think it's really important, Richard, that we really define what it is we want our life to look like. And for me, my driver is to positively influence all that I meet. And so while I have different aspects of what I do with my time, whether I'm writing for Entrepreneur magazine, I'm writing a book, or whether I'm on my TV show, or I'm speaking, all around the world, they all give me an opportunity to influence people in a positive way. And so for me, that has to be the key to really unlocking your own life, because we've all been given time on earth, and it's really down to you and I of how we spend it. And so when you know what it is you want your life to look like, then you can start saying yes and no to the things that either take you to what it is that you want your life to represent, or you say no to it so that you can really protect, that journey.
So it's really interesting to understand like what entrepreneur means to you, because I see that word being bandied around a lot. And I think someone like, obviously, like you've worked in these industries for a long time, it might be quite frustrating to see how it's changed or misused. What does entrepreneur mean to you, and how do you think it gets used today?
Yeah, I totally agree. It is overused. I think there's a lot of titles that are overused. I think if somebody calls you an entrepreneur, then just accept it. I think when we're the only ones who are saying I'm an entrepreneur, that's when people start to question it. I think there's a book by Robin Sharma which is called Lead Without a Title, and I love that because we get so engrossed as to whether I'm an entrepreneur, whether I'm a leader. For me, it doesn't really matter whether I'm an entrepreneur or not. It's whether I'm actually being and living a true life, based on what I've been given. But I think, for me, an entrepreneur, I think it's a French word. It means a bearer of risk. That's what it means in its definition. Are we willing to take risks? I think beyond that, it's like I said, you've got to solve a problem. I think where I kind of get a little vexed, not just with entrepreneur, but even with the word mentor, I guess, is in network marketing, because, you have people that say they're a mentor, but yes, they're a mentor within that company. But, you're not a business mentor outside of that. You're calling yourself a mentor because you have a team. Obviously, there's exceptions. So there is going to be people who are within network marketing who are an entrepreneur, who are a mentor. But if we take, for example, like, I don't know, let's say Arbonne or Forever Living, yes, you treat it like a business, but the person who is the entrepreneur is the one who created Arbonne. and created forever living. Otherwise, you're a salesperson.
Yeah.
You know, for me, if you're selling somebody else's product, you're really not, you know, what I would class as an entrepreneur. But again, don't be offended by that, because like I said, at the end of the day, you've got to do what you believe is right. But I guess for me, an entrepreneur is somebody who's got the ability to create, who's got their own DNA within something. They solve a problem, they take risks, and they really drive, you know, something innovative or something groundbreaking.
I totally agree. From my point of view, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think there's a difference between someone who takes the initial risk and the other ones that are under that umbrella, playing with the seeds of someone else's sown. Your first book in 2014 is called Inside Job. I really like the title, and I really like the idea of I mean, obviously it has the understanding that it does start inside you. Can you explain the book and why you wrote it?
Yeah, I mean, Inside Job is very much, I mean, on the back of the book, it says you're only as good as the thoughts you think, you know, and I think, you know, in life, everything we have starts with a thought. A lot of people have a disconnect between their head and their heart, and sometimes we can think an idea to death, and the danger is that's all it will remain. So while the book talks about the importance of being quiet with yourself and really listening and getting clear on some of the thoughts and ideas that you have, equally, without action, without giving it a heartbeat, giving it legs, it'll only ever remain a thought. Really, it's really a challenge of, if you want to change your outward experience, you've got to change your inward dialogue. You know, so the first kind of few chapters are kind of like a mini autobiography. I didn't want people to think I was born with a silver spoon. I had no leg up. I didn't have £100,000 in the bank account. I left school at 15, and I had parents that were working class parents, you know, and so everything I've had to work for. And I thought it was really important to be able to share my story, because one, it resonates, and two, when I'm sharing other strategies and life hacks further on in the book, people will understand the context of what I've been through, that I'm not just, you know, just saying things that have no actual relevance and meaning. I believe the ability to reflect is the greatest weapon of self-growth. And so Inside Job is just full of lessons and stories of my ability to reflect, and in doing so, giving me practical strategy that I can then share with other people, and something that's really real. You know, my editor said that it was the most vulnerable book that she's, you know, edited. I think she'd done about 30 or 40 at that point. So that was good, you know, because for me, I do wear my heart on my sleeve. What you see is what you get. You know, I love people, and really the reason I wrote it, because I thought, you know what, I'm mentoring people, and they're saying that what I'm sharing is helping them and changing their life. I believe everybody has one book in them. I guess part of the reason why I wrote Plot Twist is because I don't believe everybody's got two books in them. But I think, you know, my thought was, if I can change one person's life, it's worth writing, and so that's what I did.
Oh, it's great. And so then you followed it up with Plot Twist. Now, again, as the title there, I explain that title for me and why that was important to have that title.
Well, it was interesting because Inside Job, I knew the title before I even started writing one sentence. With Plot Twist, it was total reverse. I kind of wrote probably 80% of it and didn't have the name. And it wasn't until my last day in Austin, Texas, when I was there, I was speaking during South by Southwest, and a guy who's from Texas, he took me and this other girl who I'd met out there called Sophia Vera, and we went to some national spring in Austin. And what they did is, because it's quite popular, it's quite a hot day, is when you go in your car down to the forest, and it's kind of a windy road, and it'll have like this little signpost that will tell you if your car's here, it'll take like an hour to get to the natural springs, or 2 hours, because it's really popular. And we didn't have much time. And when our car eventually pulled up behind another car, it was like a 2 hour like kind of sign. It's going to take 2 hours before you get there. We didn't really have the time. I was a little disappointed because it was, you know, a hot day. The sound of a natural spring just sounded like really great, because I didn't know Austin had such a thing. But Sophia in the back, she was in the back. We were sitting in this Jeep Cherokee. She shouts Plot Twist. And it was interesting. And it kind of, as soon as she said it, it really resonated with me. And she said, every time I go through a difficulty or a challenge and something doesn't go to plan, I shout plot twist, and rather than my energy being focused, on the thing that I really had my heart set on, that now it's about finding the new door, the new road, the new opportunity, and putting my energy into that. And I thought, that's it. That's the name of my book, because that's completely kind of the essence of what I'm sharing here. And I guess that really formalized the fact that we all have visions and goals for our life, that things come from left field and take us in a different direction. And this book is really about how to pivot, evolve, and reinvent yourself. I already talked about the importance of, reinventing yourself at the start, otherwise you end up like, borders. And so for me, that's kind of what Plot Twist is about. It's really about understanding, yes, we've got to have visions and goals for our life, but there is things every day in life where we have a plot twist. Are we going to put our energy into the things that we missed, we got wrong, that didn't go our way, the house fell through, the business partner, did us over for a load of money, our wife cheated on us, or whatever that looks like? Are we going to put our energy in that, or are we going to realign ourselves to the fact, yes, that didn't happen, but maybe there's a better wife out there, maybe there's a better house out there, maybe there's a better business partner, and it's putting your energy into, what is still available to you.
I think it's a great point. Is part of being an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not one. I'm just a person. I make a lot of video content, and I'm a content producer. But part of what you do is you creatively problem solve in the moment. So part of what you need to be able to do, it seems, is to be able to understand when something needs to change and then quickly, creatively find a solution to it. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think having the ability to problem solve is key. And when I've studied the life of an entrepreneur, in most cases, they've had a problematic childhood, which was the case for me. My parents divorced when I was 8, and at a young age I had to grow up. But the one thing that really helped through that difficulty and challenge is the fact that it gave me the ability to problem solve. And often in the backstory of not every entrepreneur, but there is a common theme if you look at the lives of others, that you'll see that they had a problematic childhood. And it's that ability to problem solve, which then at a young age is developed. When it comes to adulthood, it really then takes on a whole new dimension.
So do you think with your parents being divorced when you were young, that's why you looked up to your granddad so much, and he became such a figure within your life, and the entrepreneurial problem solving seemed so attractive to you? This is a way of actually having some control over what's happening?
Yeah, I don't think I made that connection at the time. And I probably only really made that connection on reflection over the last, probably 6-7 years, realizing that, because I never had a super close relationship with my grandfather. I probably got closer to him on his deathbed when I was 18, and a part of me wishes that I'd had more conversations around this. But it was more my ability to reflect on how he was, and looking and listening, because we say that legacy is really about creating something that outlives us. And so that's one thing I love about my grandfather, is even though he left this earth 18 years ago, there's still remnants of who he is that have an effect on myself. So it's difficult for me to say at that point, but certainly on reflection, yeah, I definitely feel that did play a part.
And do you think so going forward? Do you have children yourself? Are you?
Yeah, I've got 3 children, and I think my best work is being a dad. And I guess I've always said, I'm not prepared to be the greatest of mentor I can be if it comes to the detriment of being the greatest father I can be. For me, that's something that I take seriously. I love being a dad more than anything.
And how do you think, I ask a lot of people this, and I asked Evan Carmichael this and a few others we interviewed, how do you think being a dad has changed the way you approach business or you approach relationships with the people?
Yeah, I mean, the things with children is that they're so innocent, they're so forgiving, they're so curious. Obviously children are their own little characters, and I have 3 great ones, and they're all wildly different. And I guess I learn and appreciate something about, each of them. I think, your ability to keep things simple, which was always one of the things that my grandma used to say, there's that acronym of KISS, keep things simple, stupid. I think sometimes, having the ability to approach things like a child, have that curiosity, ask lots of questions. I think, you know, your ability to relate to children can help in business, in the sense of looking at things through a children's eye, especially if your business is related to that market. Then I think, you know, that's crucial. I think, you know, fatherhood is one of those things where there's a lot of investment, the sacrifice. It doesn't always feel good. You know, do what's right over what's easy is often, you know, a key part of fatherhood and a key part of, you know, business. I guess one of the kind of analogies that I've shared before is the fact, people have asked me, and I've wrote articles on this, is why startups fail. And I think one of the reasons why is because in the first kind of like 12 months, people poke and they change and they kind of mollycoddle their business too much. And if you think, you know, when there's a baby born, yes, you've got that initial stage of where you've got to nurture, you've got to protect, because they really can't survive without you. Once they get to a toddler stage, if you're still giving them, you know, breast milk and a Farley's rusk, you know, and not giving them, you know, some meat and some substance, then you're in danger of them never actually being able to grow and function on their own. And I think that kind of ability to relate has really helped me with business, allowing, you know, your business to actually grow and breathe without you having to, you know, touch it and, you know, change it constantly. I think is a good point to make.
And there's an element of trust in that, and also sitting with it when it seems a bit scary and out of control.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that I will protect my children from, and there's things that I won't, because, you know, they've got to learn. And sometimes tough love, even in business, has to take its course, you know. And there's things that are out of my control, and there's things that I can, you know, do. And I think if we put more energy into the things we can change and impact and influence and lead and guide and be a good role model, because that's the challenge. You know, we need people who've got some power, got some influence to actually lead well, that are ethical, that are moral, that are people of their word, you know, not having people that have all this power and influence, you know, and abuse it and get it wrong. You know, of course, we all make mistakes, but I think the undercurrent lifestyle has to be one which is really, you know, the essence of it has to be such to the magnitude where it is really influencing people in the right way.
And you mentioned ethics and morals there, and one of the things that Successful was built on was trust, ethics and morals within the coaching world and self-development world, and not going for that quick sale. And when you do work with ethics, morals, sometimes you get knocked down and quicker. And your TV show, your TV show is called One More Round, and I realized that that's about basically what kept you going after you got knocked down. So what is it about that kind of rocky feel that gets you sort of is implemented itself in your work?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I think there's a lot of people out there that love the spirit of the underdog. You know, some of us get fueled by the fact when people say, no, you can't, or, you know, you're excited about something and the people that you thought would be enthusiastic about it really aren't, or they take exception to it. And, you know, life's full of challenge, you know, and you really find out what's within someone when it doesn't go your way. If you really believe in something, you know, even when you've been slapped around the face and, you know, you've been kicked in the stomach, if you're still getting back up, if you're still hustling and fighting, wipe the sweat off your brow, you know, and you're still pushing forward, you really must believe in what you're going after. And for me, the whole essence of One More Round is to be able to get some people who are really believing, I love their story, love their ability to punch out of themselves, that have been knocked down flat on their face, and they've had the balls and the guts to get up and to come, you know, back out fighting. And so I wanted to create something that was real, but it was a good blend of reality, but also, you know, gave some people some practical supplication to some of the difficulties that we all face in life. What are some of the practical things that we can do when life doesn't go to plan? and also brings something that's got a little bit of humor to it. And I think as the episodes come out and people start to get a real flavor for it, then we'll really be able to have a nice mix, because there is times where you've got to be sensitive because of the nature of the story that they've had to overcome, whether it's been a sickness or a bereavement, or whether it's been a business that's failed, or something kind of tragic. Then there's obviously you've got to be sensitive to all that, but also you've got to realize that life is to be enjoyed, and we've got to have fun in business, and we've got to really pioneer a new way. And for me, One More Round really captures the imagination of the fact that we've all can share a story of when we've had to go one more round. And because life can be tough and challenging out there, it's always good to have a network of people who have said yes, flat on my face. Because when you're going through something difficult, people tend to see their circumstances as permanent and not temporary. And that's one of the key things I think in life, is to remember that everything we go through is temporary, that we never stay in that place of pain and difficulty, that things do, evolve and move forward. And so One More Round is kind of really birthed out of my desire to really want to influence people again in a positive way, but using other people to share their stories as well.
So some of the themes that you're talking about here is that there's like a theme of pivoting, change, plot twist, again, as that pivot of change, restart, and One More Round is that restart, get up. So there seems to be an element throughout your work of redemption. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and I guess that's kudos to you to be able to see that as well. In terms of my own, I guess, journey in life, I do have a relationship with God that's kind of helped me through some of the difficulties, and He's shaped a lot of my life. And while I'm not one to preach or become too God focused, equally, it is a part of my life that I'm proud of and resonate. And I think having that kind of trail of thought of the redemption that I guess I feel God's given me, I guess the natural byproduct of that is that's how it's manifest through my work. But again, I wouldn't necessarily say that was a conscious thing. It just seems to be a byproduct of my ability to have a relationship with God. Yeah, so I think that you probably hit the nail on the head.
So you mentioned earlier about some of your hard times. So what was one of the hardest times that you got to and you thought, I'm not sure what I'm doing here or where I'm going, and you really had to dig deep? Oh, we seem to have lost the connection there. Have you found it?
Yeah, it jumped out a little bit. I think I grasped hold of what you said then, which was share a hard time of where something is difficult for me. Is that pretty much it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think we learn a lot about ourselves when we go through difficulty and challenge, but equally, I always try and look for the good even in the, I guess, the challenge of difficulty. I think every business goes through that point of lean times of when the market seems to flux, where people tighten the purse strings. And I think I've been in business for 7 years, and I literally started my business right in the recession, where most people were wanting to sell their business, let alone spend money on a mentor or coach to improve it. All they're thinking is damage limitation. Let's just cut the costs. I think like I said, you've really got to have the stomach for what you believe in, and you've got to be solving a problem. And so for me, I think the difficulty really was, there were times when I wanted to quit and give up, maybe do something else. But there's just that sense of, I really believe that I did have something, that I did have a different way of thinking. I did have some resources. I did have some experience. I did have some knowledge that I believed other people would benefit from. And so, even during those hard times where I was like, gosh, I'm having to count the pennies, provide for my small family, and the realization of the fact that yeah, every week I was really focused on how much money I had and how much outgoings I had and what I had to do. And for me, I guess, financially, it's always an interesting journey we go through, because for me, it's, unless you're financially free and you create your own economy, which is pretty much what I'm in the business of doing now, is not being responsible, or being the responsibility of somebody else or government or benefits, whatever that looks like, being able to provide, is something that I think we all face. And for me, I guess, that hard time of those lean months, it makes you appreciate what you do have. And I've always been a big believer, never forget where you've come from.
Yeah, and if there's anyone out there that's at that situation now, and maybe they've been working on the business for 18 months and they really are counting the pennies, what advice would you have for them?
Well, I think one of the first questions I always get my clients to ask themselves is, am I going to die from this? And sometimes it seems a little flippant, but it's certainly not meant that way. But it really helps get perspective, Richard, because if you're going through something right now and you ask yourself the question, am I going to die from this? If the answer is no, then we really got to get some perspective. Because yes, I guess worst case scenario, you have to go back onto the job market or sign on the dole or whatever that looks like. And yes, that's a horrible place to be, and it kicks you in the pants. Your ego just gets completely knocked out, especially as a man. We want to provide, we want to take care of, we want to be responsible. And I think, for me, my advice is, ask yourself the question, am I going to die from this? And then I think, for me, I left full-time employment. I went and got a part-time job. I worked that part-time job while I was working full-time on my own business. And then it reached a point where I was like, you know what, I've got to throw myself fully into this, because I'm holding myself back, because I can't schedule what I want to do, because I've always got to clock into work at these times. And literally, I remember taking that transition, taking that step, leaving that part-time job. And within, I think it was 3 weeks of leaving that part-time job, I replaced my income that I was getting from that part-time job with my full-time job. So sometimes, you need little baby steps. For other people, actually, even that can still be too comfortable. It isn't good to be comfortable in business or in life if you want to keep growing, if you haven't reached where it is you want to go. You can get comfortable once you've cracked it and you've created a lifestyle that's self-sustaining, and you're happy with your lot. But if you're really wanting to drive forward, you've got to realize that being uncomfortable has got to be a part of that.
So getting comfortable, change and getting comfortable. So guys, thank you for speaking to us, Mark. Where can people see let's start with your TV show. Where can they see One More Round?
Okay, yeah. So One More Round airs on Apple TV, Roku TV, and they're constantly adding other digital medias to that. The actual network is called DirectSalesTv, and they're very forward thinking. They're constantly adding partnerships where they can host their channel on other platforms like Apple TV. But my show, One More Round, it airs every Saturday morning at 3 p.m. UK time, which is 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Happily send the link and we can send that out to people so that they can subscribe to the channel, watch it live. If they're not able to watch it live, there is a catch up that people can then go, and you can see it on your smartphone, see it on your laptop, but fundamentally, it's appearing on your smart TV.
And how can people appear on the show if they'd like to be involved with it? Yeah,
so I mean, at this present time, I'd say 99% of the people that are going to be appearing on the first 12 episodes are people that I've either interviewed on radio, they're a client, or have some kind of context with them. Doesn't mean that if I don't know you that you can't come on the show, because obviously everybody was once a stranger. So for me, if you really want to come on the show, then it's a question of emailing me. We'll probably schedule a call and me get to know you and see if you're a right fit for me and the audience. And you can do that by emailing me at marksephton@me.com.
And so how can people find you on social media?
Well, yeah, I love social media. I've always been a big believer that if you use social media right, it will serve you. Otherwise, you'll be its slave. Twitter, I have a decent engagement level there. My handle is @SeftonMark. You can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Sephton. I'm also on Instagram at Sefton Mark as well. They're probably the main ones.
And Facebook?
Facebook, yeah, it's an interesting one. I tend to, if I'm honest, because there's a cap on how many people you can have on Facebook, I tend to keep the creme de la creme for my Facebook. So good luck. You can request me, but I probably have a few hundred requests there that I haven't accepted.
Wow.
Haven't proved your worth yet.
So guys, and then where can people find your books, Inside Job and Plot Twist?
Yeah, so they're both on Amazon. Inside Job's available on iTunes and Audible, as well as Kindle and paperback. Plot Twist is just available on Kindle and paperback.
Fantastic. And I've heard, and I know that you've written for Entrepreneur Magazine as well. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes the obvious steps are what we're kind of looking for, but in life sometimes there's a back door, and I guess for me it was a kind of a back door for me with Entrepreneur. I think I've wrote about 14 articles for them, and they haven't rejected one yet. It's
Fantastic.
a nice arrangement that when I've got something to write, I'll send it to them, and they haven't rejected anything yet, which is nice. But how it came about, honestly, is YouTube. I was doing YouTube videos, and one of the editors found my video, and she said, "Mark, I want you to write what you've just said in that video," and that's how it came about.
That's brilliant. That's really good to know, because it's sort of like these things, you're not quite sure how they come about, but it's a really good bit of information for our listeners. So, Mark, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and we'll speak to about coming on the show, and I'll speak and hopefully see you soon. And guys, so go and check out all Mark's stuff. We'll pop all the links in the video. So everything Mark's mentioned, we'll do some pop-up links. Everything will be linked below on YouTube and in the iTunes and SoundCloud. And Mark, so one bit of advice you're giving to anyone who's maybe about a year into their entrepreneurial life or starting up a new business in this day and age with all this social media, what's the one thing one bit of advice that you could give them in today with the state of play today?
Well, there's so many that I could give. I've probably touched on several, but I guess one thing I haven't said is too many people make the mistake of the fact they focus their business all about them. And they forget it isn't about you. It's about your customer. It's about your client. So I guess my checkpoint for each of you, regardless of your business, is: are you serving your customer and your client with how you're marketing, communicating, and sharing your product or service? Or is it more about your own ego and about your own pleasure of how something looks and feels that you think looks great, but the customer isn't overly, fussed with?
Fantastic. I think it's an incredible bit of advice. So, and just quickly before we go, what's your website?
MarkSephton.com.
Fantastic. Well, cheers for your time, Mark, and we'll speak to you soon. And guys, go and check out Mark's work.